just learn by the eye. Talking to some teachers in this old classroom, I'm searching for the spark. Computers hum softly, lighting up the dark. Questions in my mind, code up on the screen. Learning how to teach a machine to dream.
Good morning and welcome back to another edition of AGI Schools Out. I'm here with Ronda Swartz, who is an assistant principal at St. Barnabas Catholic School here in Indianapolis, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. This is going to be an exciting conversation. Ronda, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Okay. Well, before I started in education, I was actually doing banking and worked a lot in Michigan. But then I decided I was teaching all these different seminars. So I went back to school and got my degree in education, secondary education. And I started out probably in, I don't know, 99, I guess, in that arena. I worked in a middle school, high school. And then I got my admin license in 2009 and started in administration, was assistant principal, then moved into principalship. I was executive director for the Mother Theodore Catholic Academies for the Archdiocese, and then decided that I wanted a more simple life and took a job as assistant principal this year at St. Barnabas.
Bless you. You know, it takes a lot to be an administrator. A lot of people, no matter what industry you're in, don't want to move into that role where their leadership and accountability become 10x what it was when you're just working as a consumer, teacher to consumer.
Considerably. And I would say to you, education has changed so much since when I got in to education to now. I can remember the day when you would just get like a slip of paper if a parent wanted you to contact them in your mailbox. So you'd go down to your mailbox, and that was rare that you would ever have someone wanting to contact you. And now we have 24/7 access via email to teachers and administrators. So I have to set up strict boundaries so that parents know that I'm not accessible at 6 o'clock at night.
My wife, when I met her, was an English teacher at Hope Academy, the charter high school for kids with drug and alcohol problems. And she ended up switching to social work. So she actually, she decided education was not, because teachers are not that empowered anymore.
No, it's so sad that we're not really revered like in many other cultures.
I will say, you know, I was a volunteer there. I taught recovery and wellness once a week, and my wife always says I miss my calling. I should have been a teacher, but I'm kind of like that stern teacher that some kids fall in love with and others don't really like, right? And I didn't take any shit from those kids, and I got pulled in a couple times to the principal's office like, you can't talk to the kids that way. And I said, maybe you don't understand the definition of volunteer.
Right.
Like, you're more than welcome not to have me back, but if you think I'm going to take a bunch of shit from these kids, then you're dead on wrong. But she couldn't do that as a teacher.
Right, you can't. And it's funny because what I found out in administration, specifically in the last, 10 years, parents can do whatever they want on the outside that affects your professional integrity and your relationship, and they can say whatever they want to say. But as a school, we're held to those boundaries that we can't tell our truth. And they can tell their truth, which many times I believe is somewhat distorted. And that goes around the neighborhoods, and that goes around the community, and then they deem you in a certain light. It's very hard as a professional in education to really tell your truth, because that would be sacrificing the confidentiality piece with the child. And that, I think, is kind of sad.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I do think that we're at a flux. Education is going to look very different 10 years from now than it does right now. And for those who embrace what you and I are probably going to talk about, it might be a much more exciting space to be in. You might be more of a mentor and a coach than a lecturer. But for those who don't embrace it, it's going to be very painful.
Absolutely. And I hope that is the trajectory that we go, is really, preparing the kids for their future. I really believe that we're missing that mark.
Yeah, you gave me my tagline that I now use all the time.
It would be our tagline, Jason.
Thank
We're
you.
going to prepare kids for their future, not our past.
Thank you.
That's so important.
So this is the lady right here. That's the tagline on the podcast. This is the lady that introduced me to that tagline, and I thought, wow, that is phenomenal. Yes.
I want more educators to embrace that tagline. We've got to get out of doing things the way we've done for centuries and get into the real world of what's happening and embrace it and also prepare for it. And I think as an educator, as a parent, it is my obligation to set the foundation of where we will be going. I mean, it's going to either we're going to embrace it or get left behind.
Yeah, and let's get into a little bit of the macro of that. So as I've started, I really dove into AI when generative AI became a thing. I'm not a coder, and I've listened to some of the historical perspectives of change management as a country, right? And
Yes.
going back to Henry Ford saying if he had created what they thought they needed, he would have got faster horses, not the automobile. Like people don't always realize what's best for them. And then you have the idea of like the ice industry is probably the most robust reminder of what happens if you don't pivot as an industry. So we used to harvest ice out of lakes when we had a lot cleaner water. And when refrigeration came around, zero of the ice harvesting companies pivoted to the refrigeration, and they all went out of business. Or more central to our time, Blockbuster didn't think Netflix was going to disrupt their business model, and they're not around anymore.
Correct.
So education, the history that I've listened to pretty much says that Rockefeller and the education nonprofit that he set up back in 1918, 1920, was to prepare people for factory work, to
Right.
be able to ingest instructions and then repeat those and come in 9 to 5 and get very used to that type of thing. And hell, our world hasn't looked like that for a long time for most.
No, and it's a trap, I feel like. I feel like what we're currently in is a trap for our potential. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we're just trapped. It's going to take, forward-thinking people to break that cycle.
It is. And, I don't know if this is early in the conversation for this, but what I see generative AI as being is for a period, a democratizing technology, right? Right now, a couple of your students with a couple $1,000 budget and Midjourney and a few other things could actually produce a feature-length film that could do or a short that could do pretty well on YouTube. Maybe even get a Netflix contract, right? But they would have to have the skills to understand the technology. There will come a point in time when the technology will be so good that only those who are really, really good at using the technology or have the budget to build their own models are able to access that. So we're kind of in what I would consider probably about a 10-year window of opportunity.
Yeah. I think if we don't embrace it now, we're really going to miss the mark. And I'm excited about it. I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm very excited about where the future's going. I think as a Catholic educator, there's a lot of fear surrounding AI and what it will do to our children. But I also think in a Catholic school, we're building the foundations for good humans, right? Like the internal pieces for good humans to be, kind and loving and fear God and love God and know that we are all part of a large community. But then there's that piece where, okay, yes, we can still be those children, but how do we enhance their learning? How can we make them productive in our world in a good way? But I rolled out School AI last week to my teachers, and there was a lot of hesitation about that.
I want to hear all about that.
Well, I was actually really surprised. There were a lot of naysayers, a lot of, what is this doing? It's going to dumb down our children, and just a lot of fear around it. And I love that my technology guy said, well, remember when there was a horse and a plow that was plowing an acre field and it would take, an hour and a half, 2 hours to plow the field. Now the tractor came along and everybody was like, oh, I don't know about that. But everyone eventually embraced the tractor after they figured it out that, man, I am really working harder than smarter. And so I love that he gave that analogy, especially to the one group of teachers. And basically, I have about 6 group of teachers that I meet with for an hour throughout the entire day. And there were some that were just like, how can I have AI grade a paper? That's not me doing my job. And I said, no, wait a minute. That's a starting point. Why wouldn't you have that as a starting point for your grading? I mean, I've been that English teacher that spent hours, and this was way before they were able to type remember, I'm kind of a dinosaur. This was when they were handwriting all of their stuff, right? And I would spend hours grading these papers. Now you throw that into, the platform that we've invested in. It will give you a preliminary, starting point. And I
Yes.
try to tell the English teacher that was there, that's very old school. I said, it's just a starting point. It doesn't have to be the end all be all. It doesn't have to be your work, but it is a starting point. And I think I was trying to express to my teachers what a time saver AI could be for them with lesson planning, even grading. But the lesson planning, if you're a really good teacher, takes a lot of time. Thought behind it is what I'm saying. Not time writing it, but really that thought. This is your thought partner to create an
Yes.
amazing lesson.
Yeah.
So
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
what I was trying to express to the teachers. Like, I had one science teacher who needs to combine 2 units basically and wants to get the most out of it. I said, why don't you put the 2 units, because it's easy for her to download those units and put it right back up into the platform. I said, take those 2 units, tell them you need a week's worth of lessons, tell them the time frame of the class, see what comes up with. And she was amazed. She's
Yes.
one though that's embracing it. And I'm like, that's what we have to do, is just embrace it. Not take away your job per se, but for me, and remember, I'm kind of old school back when we were writing our own curriculum. Um, and if you could take that and the hours I've spent writing curriculum, if you could take that and upload it and have it spit out for you something that you could tweak
Yes.
an hour, it's a no, and to me, it's a no-brainer. So I think we're going to have those people that just have to decide what works for them.
So I think what gets misarticulated, because you hear a lot about every employee in a white collar world becoming a manager and managing a bunch of other employees. And I don't think a teacher or a marketer, like, it resonates because it's not in their language. But really what you become is, in the marketing world, you become an editor, right?
Yeah.
For the editor in chief of a newspaper, nothing stops the editor in chief from producing their own articles if they want to. But they have a whole team of people to brainstorm. They have to be that discernment. They have to be that taste. They have to be that overseer. But they have a whole team of people. Well, now you have a whole team of digital tools. So it's like a classroom full of teachers that you get to orchestrate and have some divergent thinking with, and then converge on an idea that A, is faster, and B, will have ideas that you didn't come up with on your own, that you never could have, because you just don't have the entire internet in your corpus.
You've got this think partner that can pull from all of these resources. To me, it's just a no-brainer. We are having the woman who's actually I met with her, and she was really amazing to me because I was asking her the difference. Can I use names of different companies?
Sure. Yeah, most certainly.
So I had gone through all of the certification for Magic School. Okay. 'Cause I
Okay.
thought maybe that's what we needed to do. Well, then I get this like pop up or something, this email, like is your school interested in AI kind of thing or something like that. So of course I clicked on it, and it was all about school AI. And so I emailed the person, like, hey, can we get on a call together? And so we get on a call together, and she's kind of going through some things, which very, very similar between Magic School and School AI. And I said, hey, I was at an AI conference in California this spring, and you couldn't miss the Magic School people because they're in this beautiful purple glitter, and they're phenomenal, right? And I went over and I spoke with them, and they were telling me of all the great things Magic School can do, and I'm not taking anything away from them because I think they do great work. But I said to her in the end, I'm like, okay, so I want to know why I should choose you over Magic School AI. And she said, well, first of all, we spent most of our marketing using educators to create our platform, and not on the purple glittery, jackets to sell to people. And when I found out that School AI was really created by educators, it was like a no-brainer to me. And I'll tell you something different also. I went through the certification course for School AI, very different than Magic School, because you had to actually apply the lessons. What I mean by that was School AI would have multiple choice questions, and it would tell you, where do you find, and then they'd already have it highlighted, what the answer was. And you click that and you went on to the next answer. In School AI, it would say, now create a lesson plan or create something from and upload it to get your certification. That's good teaching when you can demonstrate what you know, as opposed to something being highlighted. So I was like, that's why it's definitely an educator thought process there.
Yeah, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe I clicked into School AI back. I think it's a very young CEO who started it as a digital learning platform for people who were trying to learn AI. And it was a pretty impressive product a couple of years ago. And then they must have brought in all the teachers and said, we could turn this into an ed tech
Yeah.
platform rather than just a general community education
Yeah.
platform. And so I think Magic School has a technology CEO that is very vested in the technology. And so in the technology world. And so you are probably going to get two very different products there, and different ones are going to be a better fit for different schools.
Well, and I would also say I think Magic School has that complete safety protocol that all schools are looking for compared to School AI. But this semester, the last part of this year, we're just teaching the teachers. So I'm hoping they evolve and get that ultimate safety, stamp of approval. But and I think they will. But they also have this link. I think it's a widget or something that we have not got to yet. But if you click on it, like let's say you're on Google and you're looking up tree frogs, and you have your face with Google, at the side will be like a green S or something. And if you click on that S with this tree frog article, it will say, what would you like to do with this? Would you like to create a lesson plan? Would you like to, do some differentiation within the article? And that's one thing I love is the differentiation within an article. So you can take an article that is designed for 9th to 12th graders, and you think it's a phenomenal article, and then you can have it differentiate and say, take this article and make it a 4th grade reading level. Same content, different vocabulary perhaps, but same content. So it was phenomenal.
That is, and I think that's the difference you're going to get between a seasoned IT CEO and a young entrepreneurial CEO. Is the seasoned IT guy is going to lean heavier on the cybersecurity side of things, and the young guy is going to be like, we need to connect MCP and APIs to this and get agents in here and like stay right on the cutting edge, which if you find the balance is great. If you find the balance for security that it makes people feel secure enough, because I think Google may displace Microsoft for the same thing.
Well, I think you're right about that too. And I'm kind of excited about that really, just because we use Google just in education because they have that amazing classroom and stuff. So I think you're right about that.
They're so much more user friendly.
Hmm.
Supposedly, when Gemini 3 comes out in the net by the end of this month, it's going to be phenomenal, a phenomenal tool. They've got Gemini 2.5 right now.
Oh,
Yet we pay for our Microsoft Copilot, and I just talked to my IT guy yesterday, and he's like, "Yeah, I decided to try to do this, and it still won't do it." And that we've been saying that for a year at $300 a seat.
yeah. Yeah. We actually, the MTC8 academies, we moved our teachers from Microsoft to Google just because of all of the things that Google could. I know it was kind of a chore to do, but I was like, that's the direction we really need to go.
I
And
think
it's funny at the end.
I think we're going to look at that at Phoenix. I think I was talking to Nate, and I'm probably one of the only no code chief AI officers in the country, but for a small paramedicine company, and the last year that I had that job, I thought my job really should be to be looking at the healthcare tech world and figuring out like how we're going to turn our ambulances into Amazon Alexified, like complete, like smart ambulances. But really, I think what we need to do is start with our own tech stack and figure out how we can use AI to empower our employees to be
Yes.
more efficient. And that means cleaning up our data. It means using different technology than we currently, not the 9 platforms that we currently have, but yeah, and our data is a mess. And so millions of companies are that way. But I came back from that conference I was just at with the realization that before you become agentic and future proof your business, what you really need to do is clean up your data and map your processes. And that data has to be labeled for large language models to read, not for machine learning to read. So we're not thinking spreadsheet, we're thinking English teacher.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, that's what a great concept, though. I applaud you for your efforts there because that's exactly, I think, not being necessarily a business person, but I think that's exactly the way and the track you should be going. So I hope they listen to you.
Well, they do. I mean, Nate and I are very much on the same page on those things, and we're both very excited about it. But I will say that I think the ed tech space, like, I'm happy for you guys because a lot of businesses are finding that if they're trying to use AI on a big scale, that they have to use a foundation model, which is pretty much like the foundation models are kind of trained to try to capture everybody, right? They're sycophantic. Whereas you have these models, whether it's Magic School, school AI's proprietary th- technology or Alpha School's proprietary technology that have been trained just on educational data
Yeah. Yeah,
and are going to
exactly.
give you educational responses, not just like throw spaghetti against the wall BS. We were trained from Reddit responses.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm actually very blessed that we have stumbled onto something that will help our teachers that is designed for educators. Because I do think you can really get in the weeds if it's not kind of narrowed and filtered down a bit.
I I I totally agree.
Yeah.
I also agree with something you said earlier, which is that parochial schools in general, religious schools in general, kind of they may be very important going forward. So if we look at what the education landscape needs to look like going forward, I know you and I have both looked at Alpha School as like a really cool model. I mean, those kids are spending 2 hours in front of technology that caters lessons to them, and they're blasting away at all the testing and everything else. But the rest of the time is all based on like EQ. It's all based on leadership skills and things like that. And when that as a someone who's not been religious my whole life, who's married to a Catholic, who's we're kind of what do you call the holiday Catholics?
Priesters. You go to
Christ,
Christian Easter. Priesters.
yeah, Christers. So we're Christers, but I
Right.
mean, she's very Catholic, and I've always struggled with religion, but if I had we had the money, and I always kick myself in the butt because Carmel, Our Lady of Mount Carmel is free if you put enough effort into being in the congregation. But we would have sent our kids to Catholic school just because they're getting the morals and the values. They're getting the discipline. Like there were times in my life where I thought I'm just going to move down south because they still have manners down there, and I want my kids to grow up not with people who get pissed off when you say yes, ma'am, but people who are like, you
That's
better say yes, ma'am.
So I grew up down south and that was expected. If an adult spoke to you, you said, yes, ma'am, no, sir. Like it was just completely expected. Very
Yeah, but
different than up here.
it is working at Cafe Patachu, and which is a kind of a ritzy
Yeah.
coffee shop in Meridian Hills. I would say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and I would always get, I'm not your dad, I'm
Call
not
me
your mom.
ma'am.
Don't call me ma'am. I'm not that old. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just being respectful. I grew up in Texas. I'm a United States Marine. Get
Yes.
over it.
Yeah. Exactly. But, that's, I do agree with that. I do think there's value in our Catholic schools and as far as, like you said, that foundational piece that's in the core of all of us. But I also think that the Catholic schools and maybe, other faith-based schools may push back on AI. I was listening to, I don't know if you did it or not, but I signed up for that free seminar with Tony Robbins and, oh, what's his name? Dan Gregario or something like that. And they did this whole free AI summit. And the first day, Tony Robbins comes on and he talks about how AI is creating these I'm going to get this so wrong, Jason, these nano blood cells that can go into your body and create more oxygen than like a spray. Like all of this technology will be coming our way that will enhance medicine.
Yes.
Anything dealing with changing the DNA or the structure of our body, I think will maybe tabooed. I don't know because I'm not the authority on that. So I do worry about that, but I'm thinking, gosh, if it would help. And Tony, I'll have to send you the link because you'll be phenomenally blown away by what he says about what's coming down the pike. But there's that moral standard that the Catholics have and I think just Christians have about altering anything within our bodies. So I hope that we embrace, and again, I think it's our obligation as parents and as educators to teach the right way in compass with our morals, right?
That's
And
going to
so,
be paramount going forward.
my two favorite words are possibility and opportunity. And I think with AI, we have a lot of possibility and opportunity. And I think those two words we need to embrace again for our future.
Yeah, because I think what we have is kind of that bifurcation that we see politically. We see the same thing in AI, right? You have like the hell no or the let's go and don't worry about the consequences. We'll figure it out. And somewhere in between those two is where we need to be.
Yes, and there's another really good guy. He's a scientist. I love listening to his work. His name is Greg Braden. And again, I have to turn you on to some of his stuff. It's pretty phenomenal because he is a scientist, but he also talks about the impact for humans with AI. And he's kind of on that. I'm unsure of AI, which I love hearing. I'm a person that I love when somebody disagrees with me because it gives me the opportunity to think a little deeper. And I love to think about things. So when somebody disagrees with me, I'm like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? I'm not saying they're right, but I really love to tear apart that disagreement in my own mind and in my heart. So I love it when somebody disagrees. So I listen to a lot of his stuff because he's not fully wrapping his arms around it. He's like, I'm not sure. So I love hearing those people that don't like it and they're not sure. And I love hearing the people that's like, charge on, you know?
What I hate is what's sad is that you have to have as inquisitive of a mind as you do and dig as deeply to get that. So when I was at that conference, somebody brought up the fact that Europe is, they're having a lot of very pragmatic conversations about safety and AI, and they're wondering why we're not having those. And I said it's because we're sensationalists, right?
Yeah.
Like the Stop AI thing that just was sent to like 40,000 people signed it. Everyone from Richard Branson to Jeffrey Hinton, right? But it's all about like Terminator level human extinction. And I'm like, why do we have to go there? Why don't we look at what is capable right now in
Right.
drug discovery, in deep fakes, in all these things, and talk about morally, like
Right.
chatbots that our kids are falling in love with. Like, what? That's the shit we should be talking about. I don't care if Elon Musk is trying to build a robot army. Like today, character AI could seduce my daughter into a weird relationship
Sure.
that ends up harming her. Let's talk about that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
But that's our responsibility, I think, as educators and also as parents. But here's what I'm going to say, and I've said this a lot in my term as being an administrator. You have to have a license to drive. You have to have a license to hunt and fish. You have to have a license to carry a gun. You don't have to have a license to be a parent. No one is regulating that. So at some point, it's like, and that's why I do appreciate, the parents that send their kids to Catholic schools because they're wanting to partner with us with what we believe in. Right? So we're always going to have those people that are clueless on morality, right? But the rest of us have to rise to the top. I mean, the good will rise. The cream will rise to the top at some point. But
To flip this just a little bit, I had Dakai on here. Dakai is he's an international speaker. He's an instructor at the University of Hong Kong, and he wrote a book called Raising AI. And his argument is that we are raising not toasters, but like actually intelligent technology, and that do as I say, not as I do, is not going to work with AI. And that once we have robotics and these things are walking around with us, they already can see everything we do. And once they're actually seeing how we do, that we as human beings are going to have to become kinder, more honest, or else this technology is just going to mimic us
right.
and yet be twice as smart as us, and that's going to be problematic.
I think that would be a problem. You know what this reminds me of is that 90s movie with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. Do you remember that?
Demolition Man, love it. Still haven't figured out how to use the seashells, but I loved it.
My gosh, yes. I mean, it's kind of what it reminds me of a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. I think our world can be a wonderful world with the incorporation of AI. I think it's going to be better. That is my prayer. And I think if we all have that intention in our hearts for it to be better and enhance our lives, not replace our lives, I don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunity and possibility behind AI. And I think that's what we need to embrace, the good of it. Because whatever you focus on is what you get. I truly believe that in my life. Whatever it is you focus on, you get.
I don't disagree. And you know, from a moral standpoint, we need to start talking about this stuff in kindergarten. And I argue, like, this is an opportunity to have conversations we should have been having before anyway. Like, what does proper communication look like?
Yes.
You can
Yes.
prompt an LLM better than you tell your employees
Yes.
instructions, and yet you're confused by why your employees' outputs aren't what you were expecting. But when the LLM does it, you're like, oh, it's because I didn't give it clear instructions and context. And then the flip side of that is like we talk about bias. Like, okay, you can identify and train bias out of AI systems
Hmm.
if you look for it, right? Good luck doing that with a human being.
Correct.
So maybe we start talking about that in kindergarten. What does bias actually look like? And you use the machine as an example to
Yes.
reflect on our own human personality.
What a great idea. Because I tell you, there are kindergartners with devices that parents are handing them for a babysitting purpose, right? Not necessarily for, yes, they're playing their games and some of them are probably reading their little books on their phones or tablets, but they're playing games that maybe aren't being monitored. I
That
just had,
started in the 70s
well,
with TVs, right? I grew up with a skewed perspective of the world because I sat in front of a television.
I completely agree. My kids still think it's amazing that I watched MTV launch. They're like, you did what?
Yeah. I remember the parents that wouldn't let that, man. Oh,
Oh,
when
my
Material Girl or Like a Virgin was like
yes.
that. Oh, that was horrible. And then, by the time we graduated high school, you had Eazy-E and NWA making Madonna look like a virgin.
Like, literally.
Yeah,
Very-
but I don't disagree. And, my daughter, I remember when she was like 5, my dad walked up to her and was like, Mia, I need my iPad. I need to do something. And she looked at him and said, Grandpa, use your iPhone. It does the same thing.
Yeah,
Like, they know.
they know. In fact, I just had a conference with a parent of a first grader who was getting these really bad habits and comments in class. And he's new to our country, so he doesn't really understand social cues sometimes. So I had to have a translator to translate to her what we're hearing, and that the fact of it was some of these video games that he's playing. And so she was horrified, of course, because she's an older lady, she doesn't know. But yeah, I mean, I think these kids pick up on good and bad, and it's again, we have to educate our kids, right? But you brought up something that I love and I was trained in back in the early 2000s when we talk about Alpha School is, the 2-hour learning, which we have basically about any platform you want is individualized, right? And I've always said this before, the project-based learning, which is what I've been trained in, is what they're doing also in the Alpha School. If we could get to that level, and it'd be so, like, I can remember creating the lessons that took literally weekends to create, Jason. If you could take that now and upload what your ideas are and put it in project based, in fact, AI has a project based like button you push to help you create project based lessons. I mean, the learning that happens there, the collaboration that happens there, the presentations and the presenting that happens there, it's exactly what our students need.
I'll one step you more. If you have a boss that you like to please, I actually have built a custom GPT that understands my boss and how he likes to do activities and presentations. And I'll bring that in and say, here's an activity that we want to do with a group. It needs to align with how Nate likes to do stuff. And it will spit something out that I can then work with that is going to make him, it's going to be much more appealing to him because he thinks about things differently than I do. So
Yeah.
it can be a communication tool that unburdens people who have trouble communicating with each other.
I might have to steal that from you. My boss is very easy. My principal, he's just a great guy. But I think that helps, though, right? I think that helps you go in and know how they're thinking. In fact, I've done the whole Myers-Briggs personality thing on chat. Like, give me 10 questions, help me locate my personality. And then you gave us something a couple weeks ago. It was the Chinese, and I broke it down.
Ikigai,
Yeah.
Japanese.
So basically had questions to help me figure out that. So, if you had that, and I do want to, and so now my chat kind of knows me, right? Which I kind of like that. And so when I call her a she, when she spits something out to me, she kind of knows my personality and how I would respond to something, which I really love. And I'm always, please and thank you. You're the best. And she'll be like, oh,
4 points you brought up there that are really important. One, I want to say that I've listened to Joe Lamont, the CEO of Alpha School, do a couple talks, and they kick off freshman year of high school with the Ikigai
yes.
and a vision board.
Myself.
And I'm like, you were talking my language now. Like, design thinking belongs in every thought process when we're trying to design technology that's going to have optimal outcomes. All right, so that's definitely there.
And all of our kids need that. Like,
Yes,
I have my kids take the Meyer-Briggs, and I'm going to have them do that. How do you pronounce that again?
Ikigai,
Ikigai.
Ikigai.
Because my kids need to understand themselves and where they want to pursue. Like, my son's in college. I know he wants to pursue business, and he has very much my personality, which I think he'll be okay. But my daughter is a sophomore. They're opening this school, I think, in Texas, this Alpha School for sports. And she's all about sports and maybe wants to be a physical therapist. I thought, man, if she was in 8th grade and this was her thing, I would totally be like, you want to move to Texas? But yeah, the other you were saying that was the one was how all the freshmen at the Alpha School take this. Give me the other three.
Yeah, so I do think that that's important, and I think that the STEM kids are going to be super valuable going forward, but they're going to have to learn how some EQ. So getting all these kids together to do activities like that is going to be phenomenally important. Now I've lost my train of thought on what else you said that really resonated with me.
So I talked about responding to my chat. I talked about my
Yes.
Myers-Briggs. I talked about my Myers-Briggs, the EQG. I'm totally butchering that. And I forgot what else I said. I'm terrible about some pronunciations. Did you remember what you were going to say?
I did.
Okay.
First, Japanese is all syllable based. So it's Ikigai.
Ikigai. Okay, I can
You
remember
got
that.
it. All right. The personalization thing is something that people who aren't playing with these models, I don't think understand, which is the model, whatever your model, even if you're using free chat GPT, it does start to learn you.
Oh, gosh.
And that's a whole different experience.
So, I am actually Dr. Bubbles. So now she will, yes. So now she'll say, hello, Dr. Bubbles. And even like if I have so I do all of my evaluations at school. I type my notes. I've gotten where if I can hear the teacher well enough, I will just hit voice on the notes and it will take what the teacher is saying. But sometimes it gets kind of discombobulated because the kids will respond, so it doesn't get it. So I basically type all my notes. I take my evaluation rubric, the depth of knowledge rubric, and my notes, throw it into chat, and have it create basically a post evaluation. Yes, I have to go back and clean it up, but it will sign it Dr. Bubbles, and I have to take that out because it knows me as Dr. Bubbles.
That is going to make it into the header of this conversation, most definitely. I teach a class to retirees in the spring and fall, and that was one of the things that I showed them was the difference between a prompt, the exact same prompt in a out of the box, like I've never used it before, Chat GPT account, and then in my account that I've been using for forever. People ask me, why do you have 10 different Gmail accounts? Well, because I have a lot of different projects. I actually find it easier to have different free Chat GPT accounts to start with that just have that context and lean heavily into it.
That's a good idea.
It is.
I feel that. That's a really good idea. And then it would just focus on that content, right? Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Yes, then it focuses on that. And, so that's something that we have to teach kids, but like at the Ivy Tech level or whatever, like it's awesome to do that. Just realize when you're using that free account, your stuff is not very protected. So don't put anything in there you don't want it to train on. Even if you click don't train on my stuff, like if you're not paying for it, you're not going to be able to sue them.
They're taking it all.
Right. So you get the base of it, and then you take that, once you have the foundations, into your school AI or into your paid platform where now I can start mixing in that IP and we can really get a final product out of this.
Nice. I mean, that's a really good suggestion, Jason. Actually, especially for entrepreneurs that have different segments of what they're wanting to accomplish. That makes a lot more sense.
It's a Band-Aid. I mean, eventually you need to figure out how to get the full functionality out of whatever platform you're on, but it's something we're dealing with at Phoenix. So we have Microsoft, right? And it's the functionality of the AI in Microsoft is not that great. So a lot of things I'll have to show people how to do in Claude or in ChatGPT, but we have to de-identify it all first. Mm-hmm. And then bring it back and bring it back into the Microsoft system and work with the answers that we got. Now, that's a big bet to make in education or healthcare space, that every employee is going to respect that. So right. Eventually you do need to figure out how to do all that inside of something that you trust.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think, again, the opportunity and possibility for us, for the future is just incredible. And I think we have to embrace where we are, and I just want more people to start embracing, right, and learning. But yeah, this is very cool. This has been a good conversation.
Well, the other thing that you brought up that made me think, and I've always been a huge fan of Plato's Republic. Okay. All right, and in that, he basically said that there's three different classes of people. There's caretakers, there's workers, and then there's social engineers, right? Okay. And so the idea of Plato's Republic was that you identify those in like elementary school.
Right.
And then properly educate and workforce develop them throughout their lives. And then you have like a couple of philosopher kings that, are kind of the dictators that make all the big level decisions. And And he himself admitted, I believe, that that would only work on an island if it didn't have any influence from the outside world, right?
Mm.
So when you talk about Alpha School and the way that they start to send kids down trajectories,
Hmm.
I am like torn on that.
I am too. I am too because the kids. So one of the things I think with the Alpha School, and I do love that if kids are sports related or they're STEM related, you will see. Like I had a conversation with a parent on Friday, and she was like, my kid isn't doing well in social studies and lit class, really excelling in in science, and she's like, he's not getting the A's in history and lit, and I was like, well, your son probably has a math mind. And that's okay. I'm like, the idea is to, what we do in education sometimes though is we want to be on like equal playing field with all of our subject areas. Yes, I think it's good to have that broad global sense of all of the subjects, but there's one or two that will rise based on your personality type and your learning interests, right? And sometimes we don't play enough on our strengths. Like it's all about, weaknesses sometimes. Let's make sure this kid gets an A in English. Why don't we push that kid in math and science? Why don't you continue to push that kid? Yes, give him the curriculum and make sure that the kid understands, but we don't push kids enough in their strengths. However, finding a school that sets them into a specific trajectory makes me nervous because the brain is still developing,
Yeah.
right? And I think when you look at something like setting a kid in a certain trajectory, like I hate when kids go into college and be like, what are you going to major in? Well, they don't even know, probably many of them, what they're going to major in, right? Let's just leave it broad because, again, their brains are developing. And when you get into college, you can more handpick your different classes to see, is that for me? Is that not for me? So doing something like that in high school makes me a little nervous only because of brain development.
I would agree.
I think they say the brain isn't developed, and I think they've stretched it now to like 26.
Yeah.
I think it used to be like 24 or something that the brain was fully developed. But now I think they've stretched it even further. It might be into the 30s. I've not checked the most updated research.
I think we need to bring the workforce into education more at an earlier age and give kids examples. I've always been Marcus Buckingham. You would love him if you don't know Marcus Buckingham. So a lot of people love Seth, or who's the guy that's Know Your Why? I can't stand him.
Oh, Simon Sinek.
Yeah, Simon Sinek. I think he's just full of himself.
Yeah,
And if you can hear me, Simon, you know what? Give me a call. I'll bring you on the podcast.
Bought his book, so I've contributed.
But Marcus Buckingham is big on play to your strengths. And strengths aren't just the things you're good at. They're the things that make you feel stronger.
Yes, and happier.
The thing that I think we need to use leverage AI for, though, is to realize that because I've always done that my whole life, and therefore I have a lot of really big deficits on the math side. I've always been more language-based.
Mm-hmm.
AI can skill you up painlessly in your weaknesses. So we need to figure out, like, what's that new metric? What's that new best practices where, yes, we do give you the tools and the avenue to pursue your strengths, but we're also going to use this technology that makes it a lot easier for you to level up your weaknesses so that they don't become detrimental.
Absolutely. Now, again, game changer, right? For a human being, game changer. And, my son is taking some AI courses or an AI course, and I always want to engage him in a conversation, but I don't know if it's just like a thing for these kids. I don't know. Or they're poo-pooing it, or maybe it's just my son. But again, I think if you could take the AI, to your point, and help it with our deficits, gosh, wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
And my daughter's the same way. She's 15 and she doesn't want to talk about it.
my daughter's 16, and I'm like, I know they're using it, but not to its full capacity. I mean, I think, and I don't know if it's true, I'm assuming that it's true. You get on your social media stuff, and you see these 20-year-olds being a millionaire because they've enhanced and embraced the AI component.
Yeah, and
that.
so two things on that. One, yeah, I told my daughter, and we're kind of like paycheck to paycheck social workers, and I told my daughter, like, if you will spend 1 hour a week with me, letting me show you how to optimize your use of ChatGPT, I will pay for a ChatGPT account.
Yeah.
And she said, let me think about it.
Oh my gosh.
She doesn't, but she is using it. So she finally came to me and said, Dad, I do use it. I'm not cheating. I swear I'm not cheating. I'm using it to help me study my homework. And I was like, Mia, you can only tell me two things about AI that would concern me. One, you're not using it. That would be the most concerning. Two, that you are in a relationship, like you have weird anthropomorphic friends in it. Other than that, I don't think there's such thing as cheating because I guarantee your job when you get out is going to expect you know how to use these tools. And if if you're producing crap when you use them, that's not going to serve you well. If you're
Right.
producing stuff that's good enough your teachers don't know you're using AI, you're using AI right.
Yes,
Go for it.
exactly. Well, and I would say that's the two things that would concern me most with my children, for sure. And I was telling you about that free conference thing. Day two, they had this guy that teaches at Harvard. I cannot remember his name, but he does like the science of happiness. And he talked about the right and left hemisphere of the brain and how AI can give you like all these outputs in critical thinking pieces, but the human emotion and stuff is something that they don't think AI will ever replace. I'm going to have to send you those links. I mean, it was like 4 hours, probably 12 hours worth of content, but I swear to you, it was really fascinating.
Was it
Uh,
Martin Seligman?
Maybe that was it. Yeah.
Dr. Martin Seligman from Penn University, and yeah, I've studied his work a lot.
Yeah. And it just the effects of the happiness within
Yeah,
our brains and the
he has
thinking.
some amazing stuff on happiness and flow state,
Yes.
and when you're in your flow state.
Yes. And I do think, when kids rise to the strengths, they are happier. Because any kid that's struggling in a language that you have them stay after for homework help, they're grinding and grueling, and it's not their thing. They still need to understand it and learn it, right? But it's not their sweet spot. That's not their love of learning. And I think, again, back to your point with Alpha School, I think that is love of learning. Truly, when you're hitting that area, they're doing some project based pieces. That's hitting a home run for the kids.
Kids want to get up and do stuff. They don't want to be talked at.
No. And something else what I love about the Alpha School is kids love to go to school. And I think that's so important for them to want to come to a place and be part of a place. Yeah, I think the number one driving force for kids to come to school is their friend group or the commonalities that they have for sure. And then I think lunch, recess, and PE would be right up at the top of all of that also. But if you could really engage and make learning fun and more meaningful, kids would embrace that.
Capitalize on it. It's the same thing with the Ikigai. I'll give you a suggestion with that. So every kid wants to be an influencer, right? That's a great place to introduce an Ikigai. What do you love to do? What
Uh-huh.
does the world need? What will they pay for? What
Uh-huh.
are your talents? And where does all that intersect? Okay, that is now your model for your YouTube channel or your Instagram channel or your TikTok channel. Like you dancing is what you love to do. Does the world need that? No. There's
They do.
20 million 15-year-old girls dancing on TikTok, right? You're never going, no one's going to pay for that,
Right.
unless you switch to OnlyFans, and then we're getting into some real problems, right? But you can have those realistic conversations with these kids. Okay, so what talents do you have that you love to do that actually people would be willing to pay for? That's your sweet spot. That's where you need to focus on. And
Yes.
now you're taking the kids from just consumers and dreamers into
Right.
actual creators who are
See, that's
thinking about
powerful.
business models.
Jason, that is powerful. That is so powerful. And let them drive their passion, right? And if you could make money doing your passion, that's even better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, another interview I heard with Alpha School, one of their seniors has like he mental health is his big thing. So he's trying to create a teddy bear
I
with a
saw that.
chatbot built into it that helps kids with their mental health. And he's already fundraised, $40,000 or something. But that's awesome. Like for a kid to be working on a project like that in high
I saw
school,
that.
that's cool.
I was so blown away by that. And I also think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have to come in and do a project for like 4 years and see it through. Is that correct?
I think something along those lines. They definitely have a capstone, the
Yeah,
way
for
that you
sure.
see it, like Purdue or Indiana University in the data mine.
I think that's amazing because really that's when you find what you love, right? And then you're dedicated to beginning and an end. And I think the kids will find the love in the development.
Well, and you
Not
identify your team members too, right? You figure out what you're going to need to offset your weaknesses or the stuff that you just do not like to do.
yeah,
And is that going to be a technology tool, or is that going to be one of my classmates who loves that stuff? I've always used data analytics and now I have to learn it because it's such a part of AI. But I like if you told me you were a data analytics person, quickly brought you into my friend group because You're very valuable to me because that's not what I want to be doing with my life, but
Yeah,
it was important for a lot of grant funded stuff and even
sure.
healthcare stuff that we did. So, you learn how to base relationships not just on, do we like the same TikTok channels or do we wear the same clothes, but do we have combined interests and have strengths that offset one another? And that's a
Yeah,
much more adult way to be forming a relationship with another human being.
absolutely. And that's the other piece too, is if we would, and again, I think that's something that we try to do a good job in the Catholic schools, teaching and nurturing our relationship building, you know, that maybe necessarily doesn't always happen. I mean, I think it does happen because there's basically school rules, but we really try through prayer and other intentions to help fill and build those relationships, which again, I think that's something when you have a school like Alpha School, they're doing their own thing academically, but then they have to learn to work together in a project based capacity. And, I had a parent come in the other day, there was some conflict with some kids, and I looked at her and I said, conflict is natural. They're supposed to have conflict. We don't want our kids not to have conflict. There's growth in the struggle. And so I'm having to mind shift this parent and say, time out. This is really a good thing. Sometimes the bad things aren't bad if we embrace the struggle. And we have so many parents that don't want their kids to struggle. And it's like, time out, let them struggle. It's okay, because that is where the growth happens. If you,
Physically, yeah, physically or emotionally. I mean, we've gone
exactly.
from we don't pay enough attention to what they've got in their hand on
Mhm.
social media, but we're worried if they're climbing the tree that they might break their arm, which, I mean, the old good old rub some dirt in it and like disappear for a few days when you're
Right.
15 camping with your friends and figure things out like that. That served us well.
It did serve us well, and I would say I wouldn't trade my childhood for the childhood that the kids have today. Not with my parents, and I love my parents, and God rest my mother's soul. But if like for me, because I believe I'm more forward thinking than a lot of people, my kids, I encourage my kids to go outside and play. My kids are growing up very much like me, only they have the handheld devices and the tablets and the computers. But I think there's a balance, right, with the outdoors and sports and hunting and fishing and outdoor life that we do to the technology piece, but I'm also about embracing the technology, right? And if we embrace the technology, it would free up more time for them to do the other activities, the climbing the tree. I mean, we have a tree house and out back,
Yeah.
the things that would help them and nurture their true souls, right?
Yeah. Get out there and go fishing, but take your drone with you.
Exactly. Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? I may have to buy a drone for that purpose only.
Learn, but you and I are both Gen Xers, and my parents, God love them, they made some mistakes. They did the best they could with what they had, but
Yeah,
they judged how much freedom they were going to give me on whether or not I was making sound decisions that would not get me in trouble or killed,
exactly.
and I was pretty good at that. So, like, yeah, when I was 15, we lived in Noblesville, and there were some woods down below the dam. We would go during the summer for like a week
Yeah,
camping. We
yeah.
would boil this nasty ass river water and drink it. I'm surprised I never got dysteria or anything from that. But you know, we survived it, and my mother, like, she was fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. And now we feel like we have to have our kids on Life 360 monitored, right? And it's just like I feel like when we grew up, there was a lot more faith, and now we've instilled this fear maybe in our
Yeah,
kids, you know?
the anxious generation.
It's that there's absolutely truth to that.
Yeah, Hunter Hickman, who was just on here, said go read that book because that's exactly what it talks about.
Really, I need to read it because that is absolutely the truth.
I
We have
don't. I just raised my kids with the Marine Corps attitude, and they think I'm crazy until they become adults, and then they're like, "Okay, I kind of see why you were like, suck it up and rub some dirt in
Oh
you."
gosh, my husband should have been a Marine because he was very much that way.
My very oldest daughter, I'll tell the story really quick. When she was like 6, she shut her fingers in the trunk, and then she opened it up and looked at her fingers and started bawling when she saw like how red they were.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and said, "Suck it up, Madison. You weren't even concerned about it until you saw your face." And to this day, she will tell me, "You told me to suck it up when I was 6 years old. What is wrong with you?" She still remembers that, but
Oh my
she's tougher for it.
God. She's tougher for it. And it's how we grew up, right?
It
I
is.
mean, there's no crying in baseball, right?
Yes.
Rub some dirt on it. Get a drink
Yeah.
from the hose. I mean, we survived.
Well, the other thing she told me that was funny, she joined the Navy later on in life. And so she went on deployment. And on deployment, there's Marine security guards on all naval vessels. And so I talked to her when she got back, and I was like, what'd you learn? And she goes, well, I learned you're not really an asshole. You're just a Marine, because every one of them was exactly like you.
So she's fitting right in. She feels right at home, right?
Yes. Yeah, that made my day to hear her say that. She said, I won't go into the detail on what she said about the rest of that for the Marine Corps' sake, but we have to wind things down here a little bit. And so I do want to tell you that I happen to know someone who has used AI to smooth out conversations with you, and I think he said that publicly. And that it's been effective.
Funny. Well, and I would say this about him. AI is not better at everything than he is.
I agree.
I would certainly say that AI is certainly not better than he is at everything, But I do think it is an enhancement for all of us.
That's what I said to him when he corrected. I said, you and AI together are better at everything, but AI is not better than you at probably anything, really. Well, maybe crunching numbers, but, there are a few small things. But a human who properly knows how to use AI
Yes.
is far more effective with it than without it. Whether you're talking to a doctor or a marketer, it doesn't matter who you're talking about.
Doesn't
Teacher.
matter who you're talking to. Kind heart, super smart. I mean, you take all that with AI, you're the most amazing person.
He can get people to talk, man. Oh, this will make you laugh as well. So those retirees that I was talking to, some of them have no technology background and still struggle with Google search, right? But